I'm not going to die with the great thing inside me.
Everyone, we should have pressed record for the beginning of my chat here with Steven because it was wild. Tell me about that moment that you realized you didn't want that life anymore.
So you have a tug of war for your life. And on one side, there are the trillion-dollar companies whose business model is straight up steal your life.
Your paid soldiers are going to get slaughtered.
And we're giving them the mission to steal everyone's life. So they're pulling on one side of that rope, and the other side of that rope is you. Who's going to win?
Everyone, welcome back to What the FTE, the podcast for HR leaders ready to shape the future of work. I am here with Steven Puri.
True.
He left his Hollywood career
True.
to study what really drives focus and flow, which I love your app, by the way. I'm signing up as soon as we're done this. I will. And I love that you're helping remote teams cut through the distraction and do their best work, because I have 400 and some remote people. And I'm excited to explore what you've learned, why flow beats hustle, and how leaders can create the conditions for peak performance. I love it. Welcome to the show.
None of that was pre-written. That was just extemporaneous thoughts. It was amazing.
I don't have a teleprompter.
Those listening at home or in their cars, I hope this is super engaging, entertaining, and maybe helpful if we get lucky.
Look, I think if we nail the first two, then the last one's the bonus, Jonas.
There it is. Okay, where would you like to begin?
So you had a pretty wild career doing some very cool stuff in Hollywood.
I've been very lucky.
Tell me about that moment that you realized you didn't want that life anymore.
Okay, so to set up that moment, let me tell you this little preamble, because it'll make that moment make sense, right? So
yes,
because there's a great sense of, like, in storytelling, the stone in the third act has to fall where it was thrown from the first act. So to really understand like why it falls there, you kind of have to look at the first act and go like, who threw it and where? So in my case, my parents were both engineers. Mom was a software engineer. Dad was a hardware engineer, designing like logic chips, like CPUs. And, your mom's like a great ice skater. You probably learned to ice skate when you were young. So I learned how to code. I was a little code monkey in my teens. Got a scholarship to go to USC, the University of Southern California. And it happens to be, in addition to many other things, maybe the preeminent cinema TV school in the country. But I was not in the cinema TV school, but a bunch of my friends in the dorm were aspiring Lucases and, Spielbergs and Scorseses and stuff like that. So you end up going to a lot of Tuesday night late movies and then going to a diner in the midnight and debating with your friends, if that was a good movie or not, right? So it was really fun to have that sort of education to my friends. So I happen to be, luckily, my life is a series of, and then luckily this happened, right? So I happened to be in LA when computers became powerful enough to manipulate film. So you got Avid doing nonlinear editing, you got Pro Tools editing sound, you got Silicon Graphics making graphics cards that could suddenly handle an entire, rasterize a whole film frame, and then do 24-second and then create computer graphics, right? So that blew up. I was there, sort of like, the girl in the chorus line. It was like, hey kid, come here. You know how to sing, you know how to dance, right? Because I spoke engineer, because that's what I'd been a little hacker. And I also had a little bit of a creative vocabulary. So I fell ass backwards into film, where it's like, oh shit, they need people at that intersection of the Venn diagram. I'm in there. My career kind of took off. Super fun. Ended up doing a bunch of movies, producing the digital effects, right? So I got to work with Cameron on True Lies, Fincher on Seven, Mel on Braveheart and Immortal Beloved, like Carlito's Way with Brian De Palma, all these things. So it's a great sort of sampler platter being dumped into an industry and getting to work with these top directors, because they're the only ones who get $10, $20 million to drop on visual effects. You know what I mean? It's not a lot of like terrible kids in school that get to do those movies. So I was there. And in that moment, got, again, very lucky. I met Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin when they were setting up Independence Day. I produced the digital effects for Independence Day. We won the Academy Award for the visual effects, which, it takes a village. There are 1,000 people responsible for that, but a rising tide lifts all boats. Roland, Dean, and I got on great. I started my first company with the two of them to do digital visual effects. So we grew that to 82 people, not the size of your company, but an interesting experiment in my 20s of like, oh shit, we raised $15 million of venture, did this thing, did a bunch of movies through it, and got acquired by this German media conglomerate, sort of like Liberty Media of Germany, called Das Werk, right? The 6x multiple for us, as one thinks in their 20s, you're smarter and better looking than you actually are. It's stuff goes like, oh my God, I sold my first company. I'm 28. This is so great, right? And then I had a moment of what do I want to do? Now, this leads up to your question, the answer to your question, which is I thought I've spent probably 6-7 years of my 20s doing parts of other people's movies. I would love to move upstream and see, could I get movies made? Like, could I be a studio executive, right? Got on that ladder, worked really hard, a lot of lucky breaks, a lot of, people I met, and ended up as I think an executive vice president at DreamWorks for Kurtzman Orsi, which was the era of Star Trek 11, Transformers 1 and 2, Eagle Eye, The Proposal, like that kind of stuff. And then I got poached by 20th Century Fox to go over there and run the Die Hard franchise and the Wolverine franchise and stuff like that, right? It was at Fox where I had that moment of like, what the FT am I doing? And largely born by Die Hard 5 to be, to leave some of the names out of it, but to be very clear about it. It is from the outside being a vice president at a studio, a very glamorous job, right? You're at premieres, you're flown to film festivals, you can do all the stuff, you're on set, your first name base is a lot of people, right? So it's fun. And you can kind of get anyone on the phone. It's amazing at that level. You can call anyone in the government and they're just like, oh, maybe he wants to make a movie about me. Quickly, line 3, I'll take Puri, that sort of thing. So it was fun in that regard. Let me not discount that. But there's definitely a moment on Die Hard 5 where I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like the movie was about nothing. There was a great back pressure from my boss, the chairman of Fox Filmed Entertainment, to make it regardless of the quality of the script. It was just, hey man, we can financially model this. I can tell you without knowing if the script is good, how many people will see it when. It's a great business for us to be in. It's called show business, not show art. Just push it out. Bruce has 8 weeks in the spring. Go shoot in Eastern Europe. That's sort of mentality, right? Now, which is very different than DreamWorks. DreamWorks is the last studio run by a filmmaker. When I was there, it was Steven and Stacy running it. And there was definitely a sense of like, hey, everybody, let's go home tonight and try and make our projects 1% better. Whereas at News Corp, there was like more hey, could you go home tonight and make your project 1% cheaper, right? Which is a valid business argument to make. But it's not super inspiring when you're like, I'm going to wake up, be 40 years old, be the guy making like Die Hard 9 and be like, okay, kids, it's paying for your college. I don't know if the script's any good, but, we're getting paid. And, all my friends are working on like, shooting Ant-Man 1 and they had scripts and stories for Ant-Man 5 because they're just like, it's just a factory. We're just, we already know what we're going to do. We're just going to crank them out. People see them. It doesn't matter, right? And that for me was the breaking point where I was like, this is terrible. I hated my boss. At DreamWorks, I loved the crew I worked with, but I made the silly mistake of Fox offered to double my salary, give me the Die Hard franchise that I grew up on. I remember watching Die Hard when I was a kid, right? I was like, I'll make the next one. How do you say no to that, right?
Yeah, seriously.
And I should have, because like, whoa, man, I hated it at Fox. Hated it. And my boss hated me. So it's a mutual hate society, right? And that was it. That was the moment where I'm like, I'm not going to wake up and be like that guy who's just, hey man, I know it's stupid stuff. We just make it to entertain people and that. And I thought, what's the only other thing I know how to do, Andy? It's engineering. So let me find some problems that I think I could solve. And I had one successful company, so maybe I'll do it again. And I had 2 failures in a row after that, which humiliated me. It was awful. I hated going to like the dry cleaners because I'd bump into some film friend who's like, Puri, how's it going with your thing? And I'm like, awful. We're going to close down. I burned through $3 million of other people's money. I feel like such a loser. It was the worst. But it led me to what I'm doing now, which is, super fun. And I'm very grateful for. So there are ups and downs. Long answer, but there you go. You were trapped.
No, I love that answer. And I love the journey because a lot of people only talk about the things that were successful and the businesses and the ventures and the things that were great. I mean, I imagine that everybody else that's had your title that would come and talk to me would just tell me about how great it was and how beautiful their relationship was with their boss or their peers, and how their two failed companies were actually successes.
I yeah. You get to a point where you're like,
Vulnerability.
if you and I are gonna spend time together, let me tell you what's up. And I'm having a kid. I'm having my first child in 8 weeks. And I sure hope when he and my eventual daughter are old enough to understand, oh, daddy had a job, this is what he does, that they find some of these speaking engagements I've done that were recorded, and they're like, oh shit, that's a really interesting insight into your life, Dad. That's what you did, because I doubt they want to hear it from me, but maybe they'll discover it someday. That'd be cool. This is, by the way, water, not a beer. I know I'm in Texas.
So
It's water.
look, hey, that's I'm open to it. I mean, I had one guy on our show get high during the show, so it's okay. That's is that the is it death? Who was it?
No,
Death juicer?
no, it's not liquid
Oh,
death.
that
It's a Rambler, which is the Texas version of Perrier, whatever. I'd like to say it's more exotic than it is. It's what you get at the local grocery store, and I've adapted in the last 3 years to the ways of Texas.
I mean, what brought you from Texas? I mean, streets of Hollywood to Texas. I mean, tell me how that happened.
I'll tell you a funny story. So my wife, whom should you meet her, she will be the one that you're friends with. Usually like, Puri, not that interesting. Laura, amazing. We have to have her over for dinner, right? So Laura and I met in yoga in New York. After my failed startup, I was super depressed, and I just got out of town for 2 years, moved to Manhattan, lived there, sort of like figure out what I want to do, right? So I met her then. So we then moved back to California. I helped a buddy start up a company, and she was at Apple launching the Apple Card back when it was a secret project called Project Broadway, I think. And so we came back to California. We were in California for the pandemic. To her credit, and there's a reason I bring her into the story, like 2 or 3 weeks into, the lockdowns and, oh my God, what is this thing? She was like, this is not going to end soon. And I was like, how do you know? You've never lived through a pandemic. Like, how do you know it's not going to end soon? This could be over by the end of the summer. So like another month or two go by, and I was like, okay, you're totally right. This is going to drag on for like months to years. Got it. Why did you bring that up last month? She said, well, I think we should get out of town. We're paying for this beautiful loft down in Venice Beach. We can't leave the front door, really. You can't even go out and do much. She's like, let's get out of here. So I was like, okay, where do you want to go? She's like, well, I know you've spent time in the Emirates. I never have. Can we go to Dubai? Can we go to Abu Dhabi? I was like, sure. So we lived over in the Emirates, went to Egypt and Turkey and stuff, and spent a bunch of the pandemic over there. It was amazing because then we were going to go to Bali. The property where we wanted to go and spend like the spring in Bali, we couldn't get in for a week. So we wanted to leave, but we had this week gap. My dad was here in Austin. So I called my dad. I was like, listen, instead of getting our stuff out of storage in Venice, can we just stay with you for a week and then we'll continue on to Indonesia? And my dad loves Laura. And she's like, yeah, of course, come stay with me. So I don't know if you heard about this. There was, in February, 4 years ago, a snowstorm in Texas that shut the state down. Like the power grid went down, the water plants went offline. That was the week we chose to visit Dad. It was like a third world country. And the funny thing is, like, living in New York or living where you are, like, that snowstorm would have been called like Tuesday. And here in Texas, it was unreal. I didn't realize how much you missed water more than power. Like not being able to flush a toilet or take a shower, way worse than using candles. Right? So we were here with Dad for more than a week because the airport was closed. Like it was a catastrophe. Texas was a mess, right? We were here for a couple weeks. And one night Laura looked at me and said, you know what? Your dad's getting older. This would be a place where our kids, that we're going to have could ride their bikes in the streets like that. We should move here. We should live close to your dad, take care of him and, raise kids, which honestly in Venice Beach, you can't have kids that play in the street or, Manhattan, same thing. We couldn't do that. And I thought, you know what? This is kind of like where I grew up in Northern Virginia, where you can ride your bike and play on the front lawn. And I was like, okay, that can make sense. So we bought a house. We're here.
Whee! That is, you know what? Well, congratulations on the upcoming child. That's very
freaking excited.
As a father of two, I actually made the same choice to move here to Victoria because Vancouver, I couldn't see myself raising kids. So 5-year-old and an almost 4-year-old.
That's cool. Okay. Boy, girl.
Who live in the yard. They just live in the yard. They don't even come inside. They just live outside. It's great.
Oh, and the air is clean and the water's clean. And yeah.
Exactly. And it's interesting how you change your paths to accommodate your future children in places that you've never. I lived in Manhattan as well. I never thought that I would live on Vancouver Island.
Right.
I was living in Manhattan.
Where did you live in Manhattan?
I lived in Battery Park City, 1 West Street.
I lived at 23 South End.
No way.
I could have thrown a softball and like hit the trash outside on the curb.
Yeah, I mean, if only we could track where we'd both been at what times, we probably.
I met Laura, and people at home are like, I'm bored out of my mind. I don't care. I met Laura in Brookfield Place at the Equinox. That's where we do yoga.
No way.
Yes. And when we go back to New York, which we're going back on Wednesday, we will like go down. It's like this wonderful, yummy place for us, that whole area of like Battery Park and like Hudson Yards and, the whole thing.
Oh, that's incredible. I mean, I'm long overdue to go back. I have so many great memories from.
Yeah. And the food's so good.
It's so good. The entire time I lived there, I don't think I made a meal. I lived in 300.
Why would you?
Yeah, it was like I never made a meal. Well, it's funny because I mean we're here to talk about remote work or
we are.
They were both going passionate about.
All this is going to end up on the cutting room floor. We're going to cut
both of us.
Yeah.
Both of us in New York, now living in, I mean, Austin is definitely much closer to the center of the universe. I love Austin, but I mean, tell me about the path that has taken you to where you are today.
Oh, okay. So this is probably for many people at home or in the car where it gets more interesting, which is the thing that really struck me because I had this great career in film. I went back into engineering, had 2 failed startups, were painful, right? Lost about $3 million on each, about $750,000 of my own money and another 5 and change of other people's money, right? So it was really hard. Went to Manhattan, licked my wounds. Something that really stood out for me was I had seen the patterns of really high performers and mental tricks and like techniques that they used to do certain kinds of work. And when a buddy of mine who's an engineer at Groupon said, hey, do you want to co-found a to-do list app with me? I was like, no, I don't have a secret sauce. I don't have some insight into how to make that work. I've used so many, abandoned them. I'm not your guy. But he said, would you help me for a while anyway? I was like, of course, I love you. I'll help you. But I'm not like the one who's going to run this. And in the course of doing that, he had a baby. So he's like, I got to tap out. I got to go like get a real job and, do the thing for the man. And I was like, actually, I think our code base is the foundation for something I've become super into, which is like flow states. I had experienced my first flow state. I was on a flight from Austin, heading to SF. And I was going to illustrate something with my, rudimentary Figma skills of here's a feature I think we should build, right? You guys take it and make it good. So there's Alaska Nonstop that runs between the two. And I remember getting on, Wi-Fi was broken. And we took off. We landed like 15 minutes later. And I was like, clearly an engine has fallen off. Like they're not telling us what's wrong. We're in Dallas, right? Yeah. And I actually looked down and over 2 hours and 40 minutes had gone by since I looked at the clock. We were at SFO. We were over the bay, like landing. How did that happen? Because my designs were done. And I had prepped myself for, okay, you're going to get to the hotel, grab a sandwich in the lobby, go up to the hotel room and, finish work for the morning, right? And I was like, oh, I could call a buddy of mine and have dinner. And it was a very odd experience. I couldn't tell you if the drink cart came by, the seatbelt sign. I had no recollection of what happened on the flight other than I'd done really cool designs and I lost track of time. Later, after doing the reading to try to become smarter, I realized that was a flow state. I just didn't know what that thing was. So that's what I've dedicated my life to, is say, how do I spread the knowledge about what this is and how you do it? Because, we stand on the shoulders of giants, smart people, talked about this, written about this. And I also built a website that has a lot of the conditions, the features to help you get into a flow state if that's something you want in your life. So that's kind of how we got here. And then, we emailed a bit and, I had the beer. Water water.
What is it, Bulmer's Peak? You know, you're just drunk enough to be effective, but not too drunk to be stupid or tired. It's
Just saying,
no. It's so
don't
so it's not
don't
all
sell me short. I can be stupid and tired while sober.
well, yeah, same here.
Yeah.
Same here. I say mostly stupid, but I mean, fortunately not ever tired because I have two speeds, 100% and sleeping. There's no in between.
That's
It
so
is
interesting. So I'm
yeah.
sort of the same way. And in film, friends were like that. Usually we're using Coke. And I have tried Coke and it has no effect on me. Like I don't feel better or worse. I don't feel bad. I don't feel more than myself. I'm sort of like, oh, okay. So you guys are really into this? And I feel like I'm on or I'm sleeping.
I have the same thing with friends in the finance industry in New York, and it's like you're throttling, aren't you? I'm like, ever. And they're like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, I just sleep really well when I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
And when I'm not sleeping, I have too much energy. So it
There you
needs
go.
to be dumped into something, which is whatever I'm doing.
You're
100%.
speaking into my heart. I I feel you. I have not encountered a lot of people that have said that, but you're speaking my
It's,
heart.
it's I think it's the entrepreneur's dilemma, or I don't know, I got hit in the head too many times, but I think it's like I mean, I love this. I mean, I love what you're talking about with flow states. I actually didn't know that that was called a flow state because I've felt that a bunch of times in my life, and I'm like, I always want to be like, oh, how do I get back into that zone? And so when I looked at your site, I was like, wow, like I need to get this app. Um,
Okay. Let us, if it's fair, because I think there are probably a bunch of people listening that maybe have a passing knowledge about flow states. They've heard it, but they're not really sure. I mean, I'm sure there's some flow masters, but if it's cool, let me take 60 seconds and just set the table so
yeah,
everyone's on equal footing. Okay. There was a guy, Hungarian American psychologist. His name is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I spent a long time learning how to say that properly. Right. So he had a thesis, which is like, you know what? These high performers in disparate fields, athletes, artists, scientists, inventors, they seem to talk about these concentrated states they get in very similar ways. The states where they do the stuff that's made them famous, that moves the world. How is that? So like Prometheus, you want to go up, find the fire on the mountain, bring it down for the rest of us. So he did this, interviewed them all, researched it, and he wrote the seminal work on this, which is a book called Flow. It is from whence we get the term flow state. And he said, after doing this, the most beautiful metaphor I could find is that we're all on the water paddling to move ourselves forward. But if you align your boat with the current, it carries you. You go faster and further. He said, so I want to call this flow. And a lot of people use different terms. Like there's that famous Michael Jordan quote about when I'm in the zone, it's me and the ball. And the conditions that he talked about, which you will nod your head, and some people at home or in their car will nod their head too, which is you lose track of time. Distractions fall away. Like you almost have this force field around you where you're just focused on the thing you're doing. You do your best work. You do it in less time. Like it's an amazing experience of going like, man, I'm good at this. And it feels really good. It feels healthy, right? And so he wrote, and I'm going to be quiet for a moment. He wrote about some of the conditions precedent that he found that helped these high performers get into flow. Many people, Stephen Kotler in the Flow Research Collective, a lot of people have written about it since, but we're standing on the shoulders of giants. And some of the things he found are, number one, you got to believe the thing you're doing is meaningful. He's like, I haven't found anyone who gets into flow stapling papers or doing TPS reports, kind of thing, right? You have to have skills that apply. As cool as it may be for Michael Jordan to paint, he's not going to get into flow. He doesn't have skills that apply. Or Picasso throwing a basketball, right? You have to be challenged. So it's not Michael Jordan, doing an exhibition game at his kid's high school. It's in the NBA finals at that level where the world reduces down. And all that's important is I need to control this ball and we will win, right? It's a beautiful kind of thing. Once you've experienced it, I've experienced it. And I just thought I have a thesis the way like Mihai had his thesis about, high performers. And my thesis is that we all have something great inside us. And the question of this lifetime is, are you going to get it out or not? And there are enough forces. And sadly, Laura and I have enough friends who either work at one of the meta companies or have worked at Twitter or TikTok to understand deeply how strong and intelligent the forces are that don't want you to do the great thing you're capable of. So you have a tug of war for your life. And on one side, there are the trillion-dollar companies whose business model is straight up steal your life, period, full stop. And they used to be ashamed and sort of cover that over. No longer. Like the S1s, the quarterly filings, like the earnings calls, like they're straight ahead now going like, yeah, the more of everyone's life we could steal, the better our accounting looks. We're just going to do more of that and faster and better. And by the way, we have a lot of money. So we're putting the best behavioral psychologists on staff to really understand how to do it. And we're coupling them with the best UI UX designers and the best engineers. And we're giving them the mission, steal everyone's life. So they're pulling on one side of that rope, and on the other side of that rope is you. Who's going to win? And that's what I find to be criminal. And that's what I do with my life now, is help people who say, I have something I want to do. I'm not going to die with the great thing inside me. I want help. I want tools. I make those tools.
That is amazing. So quickly, tell me about some of these tools. How do people access these tools? And then I would love to talk about remote work.
I won't go through all of them here and bore everyone, but let's talk about a couple key ones, which is there's a lot of research that music helps you fall into a flow state and stay there. Do you listen to music when you've been in a flow state? Is there something you're like, oh yeah, I have a playlist that helps? Or is there something that helps you orally? And by orally, I mean AU oral.
Yeah, it's not necessarily music, but like noise, like waves, or like I'm in a busy place, or I'm, or rain. Like it's like there's something happening that and it could be music. I'm not, I haven't found the music, but like if I'm around waves, like I can flow hard.
The studio audience is going to think I set you up to say that. But Andy, you swear to God, you've never met me before, right?
Never met you. I've never had this conversation.
In creating a website, which is what we've done, called the Suka company, the happiness company, right? The thing we did was he said, what are these components that Mihai and these smart people wrote about? How do we just make them all in one play button? So you don't need to have a music app over here or Brain FM or Endel and then have a Pomodoro timer over there and have a task. So we're just, how do we just make it so simple? You open this, hit play in the morning and you're good, right? So one of the key components is music, where there's a lot of research now that for most people, the sweet spot is music that is 60 to 90 beats per minute, certain key signatures, ambient, non-vocal, like looping melodic kind of music, right? So I happen to have a bunch of friends who are film composers. Shocking. I used to work in film, right? Who have a lot of time on their hands. So I can call up and go, hey man, who's got some time? Who wants to write like a ton of music in this genre? Like some up tempo, some down tempo, some lo-fi, stuff like that, right? Forget I'll get 1,000 hours of this music. I'm feeling all good. Put it in the app in our early version, before we even called it Suka. In the early version, threw it in there. Friend who is an audio engineer at Lucasfilm, at LucasArts, making the video games, right? So I think it was his son's high school graduation present, wanted to go to Nepal. So goes to Nepal, comes back, calls me up and says, hey, Stephen, guess what? When we were in Kathmandu, one day it rained and it was this beautiful, lush rain. I couldn't resist. I had some of my audio equipment. I recorded like 2 hours of rain. Do you want it? And I was like, why not experiment? Sure. So we threw it up as a playlist in the middle of all of these music playlists, right? We said, Himalayan Dream Rain. Listen to the rain in Kathmandu, whatever. It is our third most popular playlist now. And that inspired me to go, hey guys, we have a group chat. I'm like, hey, who likes that? Who wants something like that? And just like you said, people were like, oh, I want to have this. We got the sounds of the surf in Cyprus, Emerald Lake up in Canada with the birds, I guess, that are endemic to that area or indigenous or whatever the appropriate word is. They live there. The birds who live there, right? And then someone said to me, I really miss working in a coffee shop. And we found someone had made a recording. I don't know who it was. We just found this, a recording of a coffee shop in Vienna, Austria. And you hear like the little espresso machines, psh, and the coffee cups clanking. And you listen to it. I listened to it. This is one actually that got me, where I was like, it kind of reminds me of back when I was in film. There's a really well-known Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf that's across the street from the Directors Guild. And it's known to be like a writer's clubhouse. When you walk in there, everybody's on their little MacBook writing scripts. And, in the corner, there's the old weird guy who's written 3 studio movies this year. He's making $1 million a script. And this is just his habit from when he was 30. He just goes here and writes, right? In the corner, doesn't talk to anyone. And, there are like 2 cute girls at the communal table next to you who just got off the bus from Iowa, and they're like figuring out their first TV pilot. And it's just, there's an energy in the room. It's not that everyone's talking to each other, but it's just, I would go there and read scripts. I can't write to save my life. My emails are probably awful, but I loved being in that writer's clubhouse when I would on the weekend have like 2 dozen scripts to read. And I just sit there and read because it felt cool, like this energy in this room. And that coffee sound, I never would have thought to put that up as a playlist until someone asked me about it. Very much like what you said about, actually, I don't listen to music. I listen to rain. I love the rain. It opened up a whole door for me that I didn't know, which taught me a lot about listen to your members, like listen to people. They'll tell you what they need.
That's incredible. So how did you get into remote work? Like, I mean, this, I used to find the sounds of The Office, which is kind of weird, help me get into a flow state. And then it was coffee shops, and then pandemic happened and there was neither. So then I was trying to figure out what, what it was.
What's kind of interesting is this, Andy, is I know with the pandemic, it was a shock to the system for a lot of verticals. Oh my God, we can't be under the same fluorescent bulbs for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. But, what? Zoom became a verb. The thing that a lot of people don't realize who haven't worked in film is film has been remote, hybrid, and in person for 100 years. Every film starts out in a remote period where writers are writing in coffee shops, writing at home, they're writing partners, living room. One of those scripts gets a little attention. Suddenly there's a production office that opens. A couple of days a week, you're in there getting notes. Oh, well, Brad Pitt says he'll do it if you rewrite the role this way, and you're taking notes. And then the writers go off and write for 3 days of the week. The costumer looks for costumes. The location scouts off in Minnesota looking for locations. And it's a hybrid period. And then, of course, you're on set all day and all night. It's, RTO for months on end. And then it goes back to sound and picture editors working, and you're sort of hybrid, and then you're remote again. And leaders in film know how to lead, whether you're, producer or you're, director, whether you're a studio executive, you know how to lead in each of those stages. And ICs know how to contribute in each of those stages because it's so set up. But if you were to say to someone like, oh, well, we're in the remote period of this film, you'd be like, oh, what's period talking about? But you call it development, you call it pre-production or prep, you call it post-production, you call it production. They have different names for it, but it's that. So when I went to go to a startup, the first thing that jumped out at me was, and this is pre-pandemic when I did my first startup that failed, is I was like, oh, I don't have a ton of money. I've got to go raise money now. I'm not in a studio where I can say, oh, give me $150 million. Let's go make this. It's like, can I have $1? I talked to a lot of homeless people in alleys, see if they have $1 million. They didn't. It was crushing, soul crushing, right?
Wrong alleys.
Had I been hanging with you, different life. But what do? Then you're like, okay, I need to be really smart about how I find the talent that I need. Oh, there's a great designer in Dubai. Well, you know what? We can work together. Oh, there's a great software engineer in Montreal. She seems awesome. She seems engaged in what we're doing. So that taught me a lot about, oh man, those lessons from film about how to sort of coordinate and keep morale up and what's the cadence of seeing each other in real life versus not. It sort of informed that. So when the pandemic happened, I wasn't like, oh my God. I was more like, this is a bizarre time on Earth, but I think I understand how we could do this. And that's when we started, this company. It was running the early version of this. We were running through the pandemic.
So, I mean, what do you think is the hardest truth about remote work that nobody wants to admit?
I'm going to tell you one truth that I think is not true, and I'll tell you one truth I think is true. So,
truth and a lie?
Two truths and not truth, we were looking at your OnlyFans. truth, you can
Yeah.
scroll on TikTok. Not true.
Yeah.
My name is Steven. No, I'm kidding. So something that I found is, especially with leaders that crave ye olden days, I really need to look around an open floor plan and see everyone working right now to know that my company is moving forward, right? And we're going to come back to that because there is some validity to some of that. But I will say this. Obviously, what I do the past 6 years, all the speaking engagements, all the people I've met a lot of, people running various size companies. And what I find is common is that the problem that they ascribe to remote work, which can be boiled down to, I'm afraid you're not working, you're not furthering the goals of the company, right? That's actually a hiring problem. And I'll tell you, in film, there's a great book that Cameron Crowe wrote, who did, Almost Famous and a whole bunch of movies, right? But Cameron Crowe's an amazing character writer, and he interviewed Billy Wilder, who is an amazing director, like Some Like It Hot and all this. And he wrote a book, Conversations with Wilder. And if you are a young filmmaker, some of the lessons in there are so just incredibly succinct. The concision that you get when you're at the top of your craft and you can say exactly the thing, right? So Billy Wilder said this. He said, third act problems are really first act problems. And what he was saying is, yeah, you're going to screen your movie, you're a director, and the studio or audience is recruited, and they're going to give you, the notes. Oh, in the third act, I really didn't believe that Andy could kill the dragon with the bow of destiny. Oh, I didn't believe that Andy and Mary would fall in love, because the best friend. And what he was saying is they're going to give you notes about where they felt it, which is the third act. But the problem is in the first act, you didn't set up that Andy knew how to handle a bow. You didn't set up that Andy and Mary were actually meant for each other. But it's down here where people are going to sense it. And that's what they're going to tell you. It's like, don't listen to that. It's the thing we talked about before of like, when the stone is thrown, audiences that are not trained in storytelling, they can still tell when you lie and you throw the stone this way, and then you need at the end of the movie it to land over here, and you kind of change its trajectory in midair. They couldn't express to you what's wrong, but they know something's wrong because it's not true, right? This goes back to hiring, which is you lead a very large organization, right? Successfully. To some extent. I want to talk to you about that. I'm kidding. That's a joke. So it is interesting how when you embrace being a leader, there are several key things you have to do, like fundraising, blah, blah, blah. But the two big ones are you express the mission. We are here to cure cancer. We are here to make robots that can survive on Mars. We are here to make the best comedy movies we can. This is why we are here, right? And the second thing you do is you say, and here's our culture, which is, this is how we treat each other. This is how we treat our customers. This is how we treat our competitors. And if you do those two things well, you can hire people who are aligned with that. And a lot of those problems go away. Because let me tell you this, if I come interview with you, I'm like, hey, Andy, man, I hear you're working on cancer. And like, my dad died of lung cancer. I want to be here. I'll do whatever it takes. You don't need to look across the floor plan on Tuesday afternoon to know is Puri working. You're like, wherever he is in the world, he is trying to save someone else from having an experience that he had or watching his dad die. Period. Full stop. So hiring is usually, I find, the problem with a lot of those fears. It's you haven't hired well and you think later you can just supervise diligently to get people to do what they need to do because they're not intrinsically engaged in it. So that's one of the falsehoods that I want to say about remote work and things is you dig down, there's often fear in a lot of this. Now, let's talk about the truth, because I promised you some truth, right? This is a beer. No, that's not true. So the truth is this, is we are human, and there is absolutely a set of things that we do better when we can just be in the room and vibe. And I'll tell you, coming from my background, because everything I say is, put it through the filter. This is what Steven has lived, right? There are creative conversations when you and I are working on a story together, or you're the studio executive, or I'm the writer. There's some conversations just like, you know what, we've got a problem at the second act turn. It just gets solved in the room. When you and I can smell each other and vibe with each other and stand around a whiteboard or drink coffee together or go for a walk through, the park together and go, what should this be, right? I have never been on a Zoom, a Google Meet, a Teams thing where a great creative solution has felt as easy as being in the room. And there are things like that. I give that as one example, but there are things like that where I absolutely am like, not everything must be remote. I'm more like, Remote was just another color added to the palette. It's like, we didn't have blue before. Now we have blue. Oh, we can paint streams and blue skies and lakes. Use it when appropriate. That was the end. I know you're staring at me like I'm going to say something else. That was just stop.
I was like, I gotta write this stuff down. I should have had a pen.
Your AI bot has it recorded already, and you already put out a blog post while we're talking, authored by you. And another thing I felt in my film career.
Reading me too well here.
Not my first rodeo.
I think it's really interesting what you're talking about, because I also think it's culture as a strategy and not just as a, it kind of figures itself out. When you talk about people really believing in the mission as a hiring problem, I find there's too many people that try to hire people based on what they think their company should be or how they think people should act within the company, instead of being true to themselves because their investors or their friends or their whatever has convinced them that you need to sell people to work for your company based on things that might not actually be true or genuine. Where I really feel like you have to have the genuine belief in your own company. You have to explain what your flow state is and what your reality is for your employees, and they have to want to follow you into battle.
Bingo. Because that's exactly it.
Your paid soldiers are going to get slaughtered, when they're coming up against your competitor, who you have people that are wholeheartedly bought into what the vision and the mission of the company is. That's
completely agree.
A lot of founders fall short.
I have a question for you, because you asked me about, some of the aspects of flow. And we talked about one, which is music, and that led us down an interesting path. But I have a question for you, which is, when you are working and listening to rain or whatever it is, what are the digital distractions that pull you out? What are the things where you go, I lost half an hour?
Slack. It's one word. It is. It is a constant flow of. Yep. It's a constant negative flow of Slack, and I mean all communication channels. I mean, thankfully my email doesn't ding, because I get like 1,500 of them a day. So for anyone listening here that I haven't responded to your email, it's because I can't.
I feel better when we covered this now. Okay. I don't feel hurt.
It's incredible, because I don't know at what time it is, but it's never an appropriate time for her to get some of the stuff that she gets. And somehow it's like instant. I'm like, it's like 3 a.m. Like, how are you so on this? Like, do you have some AI in your email that I need to get access to?
That is her secret. She will never reveal it. And I support that. I think that's good. It's a good thing.
I think it's great.
Okay. Well, so let's talk for a moment, if we may. I know we're coming up at the end of our time, but I'm sure we can have some more later if we want. So when we talk about that tug of war for your attention, right? Again, social dilemma. A lot of people talk, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product, blah, blah, all the things. True. That sense of, how do I get into that state where I'm not being pulled out to check my WhatsApps or my Slacks, or opening up YouTube to watch a video about this React component, and then YouTube's algorithm knows what kind of videos to recommend to me, and suddenly I'm like, well, I'll just watch that quick one about the A380. Fascinating. Ooh, who knew? 4 engines. Which, by the way, weakness for me. So
fail videos.
Fail videos. Yeah, there you go, right? And it's like, boom, you're gone. So I'll tell you what we did, which is going to sound stupid simple, but that's what we want it to be, is when I start my session, like in the morning, I open Tsuka and hit play. The music starts. There's a QR code. I can tap it with my phone. If I touch my phone while I'm in session, the next hour, 2 hours, whatever I budgeted, it's not blocked. It's not locked. Rather, there's a smart assistant in my laptop that just says, Steven, is your phone helping you? And I get that one moment to decide, who do I want to be? And that's all I actually need most of the time, is that little thing of like, I don't want to go to dinner with Laura, be like, oh, when we're done, I got to get home. I got to finish some stuff after dinner. I didn't get done. No, I want to be like, oh, let's go have a great time. And you want to let's watch a masterclass after dinner and go to bed or something. Like, as one does when they have a pregnant wife who needs to go to bed early, right? So that thing of just, hey, who do you want to be? We did the exact same thing with digital, like website stuff. We have a free Chrome extension. I encourage everyone during onboarding, download it. It's free. And when I go, and I can customize my list, like we give you about 20 websites that are pretty obviously you don't want to open Amazon while you're working, right? You can add them, you can turn them off, open one, and you just get a little pop-up like 5-6 seconds in. So in case you're surfing between tabs, we don't bug you, but if you stay on something like 5 seconds, just says, hey, it seems like Facebook is distracting you. And you just get that moment to go, who do I want to be?
Facebook Marketplace.
Dude.
My heroine.
Yeah, but we all have those things. And that's what I was thinking is, how do we take what Mihai wrote and just say, I just want a play button, like a hit in the morning. And it starts this whole thing. And it ends up helping me be the person I want to be and not being the, 80-year-old guy or girl on the sofa that's still scrolling and double tapping, talking about how you could have done something. Oh, I had that idea for a company. Well, why didn't you do it? I could have written that book. Yeah, but you didn't. And you don't want to be that guy or girl. And no one wants to be friends with them either. It's miserable, So for the people who don't want to die with that thing that they could do inside them, that's why we're here. And, I'll close on this if you want. I'll tell you why I named it this weird ass name. So Laura, whom I met at Brookfield Place, Equinox, right, doing yoga. And by the way, that Brookfield Place Equinox, we got engaged in there. We did a yoga class. And at the end of class, the instructor let me propose to her on the exact same spot where we met, which I really loved.
That's amazing.
It was really great. And we went to Locanda Verde across the street for dinner that night. So anyway, I say this because when we were getting married, what do you do when you have a daily yoga practice? We went to Bali for our honeymoon. That's, wonderful. Do yoga, hang out on the beach, be together. So for 10 days, I knew no one from my company was going to bug me. It was like, hey man, can you prove the PO for the red staplers or whatever? Everyone's just like, leave them alone. Give them 10 days, right? So we'll go over there. I said to Laura, we have a working title for this thing I'm working on. And I really want to come up with like the name that's not like descriptive, like, oh, Flow State App 9, or Distraction Blocker 2, like Amazon's not bookstore, Nike's not like shoe seller, and she's like, I wish that for you. I hope the universe speaks to you, So we get to Bali, and the first day I said to her, I think something would seed my unconscious is, do you mind if I speak just for 5 or 10 minutes to a couple of our current members and say, what's your favorite feature? What do you love? And let that just sit in my unconscious. She's like, go for it. I'm going to the pool, my friend. You go. I'll see you at dinner. So I dropped in the group chat. I was like, who has 5 or 10 minutes to chat? I spoke to 3 people. I asked them a question like, do you love the music? Do you love the timers? Do you love the distraction blocker? What do you love? Right? The third guy, we're wrapping up. I'm like, thank you so much. I said 10 minutes. I'm going to let you go. And he said, Stephen, you asked the wrong questions. Okay. What was the right question? He said, you should have asked me, why do I pay you? I was like, dude, we charge like 30 cents a day. Like, I don't even collect a salary from this. I do this, Tony and I do it for free just because we think it's useful. So we just want to pay the server bills. But okay, fine, you win. Why do you pay me? He said, the past year or two, I found I have 2 kinds of days. At 3 o'clock, I could be playing with my kids. They're 2 and 4. Or at 6 o'clock, I can be down on myself. Like, where did the day go? I'll get up early tomorrow and try and finish today's stuff. And I realized the difference is in the morning, did I hit play in your website and have it run in the background while I worked? So I pay you because my kids are not going to be 2 and 4 forever. Okay, you won that round. So I go to dinner with Laura. And I was like, I talked to this dude today who's more articulate about what I'm doing than I am. I told her this. She's like, that's really good. Like, you should hire him as a copywriter. Like, So we're brushing our teeth. And Laura looked at me and she goes, in yoga, we hear all these Sanskrit terms like prana, life force, and karma and dharma. You wanted the universe to speak to you. It spoke to you through that guy. He described sukha. That feeling of you're in your lane doing what you're good at and you're in control. You can do it with ease. She's like, he's telling you the app shouldn't be named about the tool. It's named out where he wants to go, which is that feeling of being in control of his life, being happy. So I looked at my phone. Dude, $14 later, I owned the website, the Sukha company. It was not a hotly contested website, I'm going to tell you that. So that's ultimately what I want to do is help people get to that place of, man, I feel in control of my life again. You have to want it because there are a lot of ways to just say, I'm really good in TikTok. I'm happy giving my life up.
I love it. And Stephen, we got to go. But if this episode sparks something in you, check out the show notes. Steven's work on flow states and focus and the Suka Company. And for more candid conversations with the people sharing the future of work, don't forget to like and subscribe to What the FTE. Steven, thank you so much for joining.
It was such a pleasure.
Fun. I think my face hurts from mumbling so hard this entire show.
And for whoever's still listening, thank you for hanging with us.